How did a broken collarbone and a desk job become the moment my own son realized he had misjudged everyone in the room? When my son mocked me for taking medical leave and offered me a chair instead of respect, I smiled and agreed. What he didn't understand was why his boss lit up the second he saw me, and why that reaction quietly sealed his fate. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. The ladder shifted under my weight before I even registered what was happening. One moment I was reaching for a cluster of late-season apples. The next I was on my back in the dirt, staring at October sky through bare branches. The pain arrived slow, then all at once, a sharp grinding sensation that started in my shoulder and radiated down my arm like electricity through copper wire. I lay there breathing shallow, watching a crow circle overhead. 52 years old and flat on my back in an orchard I didn't even own, picking fruit for $12 an hour because medical bills don't pay themselves and pride doesn't buy groceries. The crow landed on a fence post and watched me with what I swear was amusement. Getting to the hospital took 3 hours. The emergency room doctor was younger than my son, blonde ponytail swinging as she moved my arm in ways that made me see white. She ordered x-rays and came back with films that showed my collarbone in 2 distinct pieces, separated by a gap that looked wrong even to my untrained eye. 6 weeks minimum, she said, not looking up from her tablet. Light duty only after that. No lifting, no reaching, no repetitive motion. I pick apples. Not anymore, you don't. She handed me prescriptions and a work restriction form. Take these to your employer. You'll need accommodations. I called Evan from the pharmacy parking lot. He answered on the 5th ring, music thumping in the background. What? I had an accident. Broke my collarbone. Silence. Then, are you serious right now? Doctor says 6 weeks medical leave, then light duty only. Dad. He said it like I'd disappointed him personally. You cannot be doing this to me right now. Doing what? I fell off a ladder. Right before the holidays? Do you have any idea how expensive everything is? I just bought a new car. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. Through the pharmacy window, I could see the clerk counting pills into orange bottles. I didn't plan this, Evan. Whatever. Listen, I can't talk right now. We'll figure something out. The line went quiet, but he hadn't hung up. I heard him say something to someone else. Heard laughter. Just don't make this my problem, okay? He disconnected before I could respond. The next morning, he showed up at my kitchen table uninvited, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He'd let himself in with the spare key I'd given him years ago, back when I thought we were the kind of family that looked after each other. So, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. 6 weeks. That's what they said. And then what? You just go back to picking fruit like nothing happened? I poured coffee I couldn't really afford. Doctor says light duty, desk work maybe. Evan laughed. Actually laughed, the sound bouncing off the cheap tile. Desk work. You. What are you qualified to do at a desk, Dad? File papers? I have a degree. From 30 years ago, in English literature. He said it like I'd confessed to something shameful. That and $3 will get you coffee. I set the pot down carefully, using my good arm. What do you want me to say? I want you to have a plan that doesn't involve me supporting you. He pulled out his phone, scrolled without really looking. Actually, you know what? I might be able to help. My company needs temporary administrative support. Nothing fancy, just data entry and filing. The pay is terrible, but it's better than nothing. I don't want charity. It's not charity, it's logistics. You need money, they need warm bodies in chairs. It's basically a favor to both of us. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something in his expression that made my chest tight. Embarrassment. He was embarrassed of me. If you're offering, I accept. He blinked. Just like that? Just like that. No arguing, no pride speech. Would it change anything? He studied me for a long moment, then shrugged. I'll send you the address. HR is Lydia something. She'll get you set up. First day is Monday. He stood, smoothing his tie. And Dad? Try to look professional, okay? This reflects on me. After he left, I sat in the kitchen watching morning light crawl across the table. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, the neighbor's dog barked at nothing, over and over, like it was trying to prove a point no one else could understand. The weekend passed in a fog of pain medication and paperwork. I organized what I'd need for Monday: the work restriction form, my college transcripts that Evan didn't think mattered, identification documents. The transcripts made me pause. Dean's list every semester, academic honors, a thesis on Hemingway's understated narrative technique that my professor had called brilliant. I remembered staying up until 3 a.m. helping other students understand Conrad and Fitzgerald. Remembered one particular student who couldn't grasp metaphor to save his life, who showed up at my dorm room twice a week with desperation in his eyes and his father's money keeping him enrolled. Monday morning, I drove to the address Evan had texted. The building was new construction, all glass and steel, with a parking lot full of cars that cost more than I'd made in the past 5 years combined. I parked my 17-year-old sedan between a Tesla and a Mercedes and felt exactly like what I was, a man who didn't belong here. The lobby was marble and chrome. A receptionist who couldn't have been 25 looked up from her computer with a smile that faded when she noticed my sling. "Can I help you?" "Mason Torin. I'm here to see Lydia Brookhaven in HR." She made a call, then directed me to the 3rd floor. The elevator was mirror-polished, and I avoided looking at my reflection. My shirt was clean, but cheap. My shoes were practical. Everything about me screamed temporary, disposable, beneath notice. HR was exactly what I expected. Lydia Brookhaven was efficiency incarnated, blonde bob and pressed suit, eyes that calculated my worth in seconds and found it wanting. She processed my paperwork without small talk, assigned me a temporary badge, and explained the rules like I might not understand basic English. "You'll be on the main floor. Data entry, document filing, basic administrative support. Your supervisor is Evan Torin." She said his name without inflection. "Any questions?" "No, ma'am." "Good. He'll show you to your desk." The main floor was open-plan chaos. Dozens of desks arranged in clusters, computers humming, phones ringing, voices overlapping in a constant buzz of productivity. Evan saw me before I saw him. I watched his expression cycle through surprise, irritation, and something like calculation before settling on professional distance. "Mason, not Dad. Let me show you your station." He led me to a desk in the corner, partially hidden by a filing cabinet, positioned so I'd have a perfect view of everyone while remaining largely invisible myself. Other employees glanced over, curious. Evan's voice carried when he wanted it to. "Everyone, this is Mason. He's helping out temporarily with administrative overflow. Medical restriction, light duty only." He said it like an apology for my existence. A few people nodded. One guy, tall with styled hair and a watch that caught the light, smirked openly. "Another pair of hands," the guy said. "We can always use those. I'm Trevor." "Mason." "Yeah, we heard." Trevor's eyes flicked to my sling. "What happened? Home improvement project go wrong?" "Orchard accident." "Ah." The single syllable conveyed everything, that he'd expected something manual, something beneath him, something that confirmed whatever hierarchy existed in his head. Evan showed me the systems, spoke in a tone he probably thought was patient but sounded condescending. I'd been using computers since before he was born, but I let him explain everything without interruption. When he finished, he stepped back, hands in pockets, and I saw him exchange a look with Trevor. "Think you can handle it?" "I'll manage." "Good. Because I can't babysit you. I have actual work." He walked away, and I heard Trevor laugh, heard them start a conversation about weekend plans and expensive restaurants. I logged into the system and started the first task, entering supplier invoices into a database. Mindless work. Exactly the kind of thing that lets you think while your hands stay busy. Around noon, Evan came back with Trevor and two others I hadn't met. They were loud, performance energy, the kind of conversation designed to be overheard. New car drives like a dream, Evan was saying. Handles better than the old one, way more power. What'd you get? Someone asked. BMW, the 540i, couldn't resist. Nice. Your old man must have helped with the down payment. Evan's laugh was sharp. My old man? No. He's not exactly in a position to help anyone. He glanced at me, saw I was listening. He's actually working here now, temporarily, medical thing. Trevor followed his gaze. Wait, that's your dad? Unfortunately. The word hung in the air. Unfortunately. Like I was a condition he'd been diagnosed with, something he had to manage. One of the others, a woman with red hair, looked uncomfortable. Trevor just grinned. Family business, Trevor said. Nothing wrong with that. It's not family business. It's charity. Evan's voice had an edge now. He needed work. I found him something. That's different from him actually being qualified. I kept entering numbers. Invoice 4729, $347. Invoice 4730, $212. The screen blurred slightly, but I blinked it clear. They moved on eventually, voices fading toward the break room. I worked through lunch, preferring hunger to conversation. By mid-afternoon, my shoulder ached despite the medication, and my eyes burned from screen time. I was saving a document when I heard a name that made me pause. Caleb wants the quarterly reports by Thursday. Rourke? He's actually reading those now? Ever since the board meeting. Guess he's feeling pressure. I looked up slowly. Across the floor, I could see into a glass-walled office where a man in his 50s sat behind a desk, phone pressed to his ear. Even at this distance, even after 30 years, I recognized the profile, the way he held his shoulders, the gesture he made with his free hand while talking. Caleb Rourke, the student who couldn't understand metaphor, the one who showed up at my dorm twice a week with panic in his eyes and his father's checkbook keeping him enrolled, the one who'd barely scraped by with a C- in every literature class we'd shared, the one whose family owned half the commercial real estate in the county. I looked back at my screen and kept typing. But something in my chest had shifted, some weight redistributing itself in a way I didn't quite understand yet. The break room was neutral territory, or supposed to be. I went there on Wednesday to fill my water bottle and found 3 employees clustered around the coffee maker, voices low but not quiet enough. Did you see him today? Same shirt as Monday. Maybe he only has one. Evan said his dad never really made anything of himself, just kind of drifted through jobs. Why would Evan even get him hired here? It's embarrassing. I stood in the doorway, bottle in hand, and watched them notice me. Their faces did that thing faces do. Guilt, then defiance, then carefully neutral. One of them, the red-haired woman from before, had the decency to look away. Sorry, she said. We didn't. It's fine. I filled my bottle and left. But it wasn't fine. Not really. That night I sat in my kitchen and looked at my bank account. $412. Rent was due in a week. The new job paid barely enough to cover basics, but basics were all I had. Evan's apartment probably cost 3 times my monthly income. The car he'd just bought cost more than I'd make in a year. I'd paid for his college, worked 2 jobs to make sure he never had student loans, never had to choose between textbooks and meals. I'd been there for every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every minor crisis that seemed world-ending at the time. His mother had left when he was 8, disappeared into a new life with a new family, and I'd been both parents. Done the laundry and the homework help and the midnight talks about girls and grades and whether he was good enough. I'd told him he was. Over and over. You're smart, you're capable, you can do anything. And he'd believed me. Believed it so thoroughly that somewhere along the way, he'd decided that if he was exceptional, I must be the opposite. Someone had to be at the bottom, and it couldn't be him. Thursday morning, Evan dropped a stack of files on my desk. These need to be digitized by end of day. I looked at the stack. 50 files, maybe 60. That's a lot for one person with limited mobility. Then work through lunch. He started to walk away, then turned back. And Mason? Try to look like you want to be here. People notice these things. Trevor wandered over after Evan left, leaning against my desk with calculated casualness. He's hard on you. He's my supervisor. He's your son. That's gotta be weird. It's temporary. Right, the injury thing. Trevor picked up a pen from my desk, clicked it a few times. What did you do before the orchard? Different things. Retail, warehouse work, some teaching. Teaching what? English, writing, long time ago. Huh. He set the pen down. And now you're here, doing data entry. Like I said, temporary. He studied me with eyes that were friendly in the way a predator can be friendly before it decides whether you're worth the effort. Must be hard seeing how well Evan's doing. Nice car, good salary, moving up, and you're... Healing, I finished. I'm healing. He smiled. Sure. That. I started scanning files. The work was mindless but time-consuming, and I was only halfway through when I heard voices approaching. Lydia from HR, walking with Caleb Rourke. They passed within 10 feet of my desk, deep in conversation about performance metrics and departmental budgets. Caleb's eyes swept across the floor with the practiced disinterest of someone used to not seeing the help. Then he saw me. His step faltered, just slightly. His expression flickered. Confusion, then recognition. Then something harder to read. Lydia kept talking, but he'd stopped listening. We looked at each other across 20 feet of corporate carpet and 30 years of divergent paths. Mr. Rourke? Lydia had noticed his distraction. Sorry, thought I saw... He shook his head. Never mind, continue. They moved on, but twice more I caught him glancing back. The third time our eyes met, he nodded, barely perceptible. I returned it. At 4 o'clock, my desk phone rang. Internal extension. Mason Torin. Mason, it's Lydia Brookhaven. Mr. Rourke would like to see you in his office when you have a moment. Now? If possible. Evan was watching from across the floor. I could feel his attention like static electricity. I saved my work and stood, making my way to the glass-walled office in the corner. Caleb's assistant, a young man with immaculate hair, waved me through. Caleb stood when I entered, closed the door himself. We were alone. Mason Torin. He said it like he was testing the words. I thought that was you. Hello, Caleb. It's been what, 30 years? About that. He gestured to a chair and I sat. He took the one beside me rather than retreating behind his desk, a gesture I recognized as deliberate. He'd always been good at social positioning, at making people comfortable. It was how he'd survived academically despite being thoroughly average. I heard someone named Torin had been hired temporarily, but I didn't make the connection. Medical leave? Collarbone. Orchard accident. And you're doing administrative work now. It wasn't quite a question. Like you said, temporarily. He smiled and it was genuine. I remember you helping me with Heart of Darkness. Spent 3 hours explaining what Conrad was actually saying. Probably saved my academic career. You did the work. I showed up. You did the work. He leaned back. I was never good at the abstract stuff. My mind doesn't work that way. But you were brilliant. Everyone said so. Professors talked about you like you were going to be the next great literary critic. Life happens. It does. He was quiet for a moment. Your son works here. Evan, right? That's right. And he got you this position. He mentioned you needed administrative support. Caleb's expression shifted slightly, something knowing entering his eyes. How's that working out? It's work. Mason, he said it gently. I'm not stupid. Maybe not book smart like you, but I know people. I've been watching since I realized who you were. I see how Evan treats you. How he talks about you when he thinks no one important is listening. I said nothing. He doesn't know, does he? About college. About how much you helped people. It was a long time ago. But he doesn't know. What would be the point of telling him? Caleb stood, walked to his window overlooking the parking lot. I built this company with my family's money and my ability to recognize talent. I'm not brilliant, but I know who is, and I remember debts. He turned back to me. I'm going to ask Lydia to extend your assignment. Keep you on the floor, doing exactly what you're doing. Would that be acceptable? Why? Because I want to see something. See what? He smiled again, but it wasn't friendly anymore. It was something else, something calculating. How far someone can climb on attitude alone, and what happens when the foundation turns out to be sand. We looked at each other, and I understood suddenly that Caleb Rourke had become a very different person from the panicked student I'd tutored. Money and power had refined him into something sharp. I appreciate the work, I said carefully. Good. Then we understand each other. He opened the door. Thank you for stopping by, Mason. Let's catch up again soon. I walked back to my desk, aware of every eye on the floor. Evan intercepted me before I could sit down. What did Rourke want? To say hello. We knew each other in college. You knew Caleb Rourke? We had classes together. Evan's face went through several expressions before settling on skepticism. Classes together doesn't mean anything. I suppose not. What did you talk about? Old times. Nothing important. He wanted to push, I could see it. But Trevor was approaching, and Evan's pride wouldn't let him interrogate his father in front of colleagues. He settled for a look that promised we'd discuss this later, then walked away. I returned to the files, scanned page after page while my shoulder throbbed and the office hummed around me. But something had changed. Some piece had moved on a board I was only beginning to see clearly. Caleb Rourke remembered, and in remembering, he'd chosen to act. I just wasn't sure yet what that action would cost. Lydia called me to HR Friday morning. She sat behind her desk with the same professional disinterest she'd shown on day one, but this time she actually looked at my file before speaking. Mr. Rourke has requested we extend your temporary assignment indefinitely. Are you amenable to this arrangement? Yes. Good. I'll process the paperwork. She paused, fingers hovering over her keyboard. Your background check came back. You have a bachelor's degree from State University. English literature, graduated with honors. That's correct. And you've been doing manual labor for the past 15 years. Jobs that were available. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw her recalculating. Well, welcome to extended temporary status, Mr. Torrin. I spent the weekend in my garage organizing 30 years of documents, college transcripts, letters of recommendation from professors, a folder of papers I'd written, graded, taught, evidence of a person I'd been before life had worn me down to something simpler, more disposable. Monday morning, Caleb stopped by my desk casually, like it wasn't a deviation from his normal routine. Mason, got a minute? We went to a cafe 2 blocks from the office, neutral ground. Caleb ordered expensive coffee, insisted on paying. We sat by the window, and he was quiet for a long moment, just watching traffic. I've been thinking about college, he said finally, about how close I came to failing out completely. My father had already donated for a new building, but even that has limits. If I'd actually flunked, the embarrassment would have been catastrophic. You passed. Because of you. You and 3 other people who basically held study groups that were just thinly disguised tutoring sessions for people like me. He smiled without humor. I knew what it was. We all did. But you never made us feel inadequate. You just explained things until they made sense. That's what you do when you understand something. You share it. No, Mason. That's what you do when you're fundamentally kind. Most smart people aren't. He sipped his coffee. I went to business school after that. My father's contacts got me into a good program. I learned enough to sound competent and hired people smarter than me to do the actual work. Built this company on their talent and my family's capital. It's a good system. Seems to be working. It is. But I never forgot where I came from. And I never forgot the people who helped me get there. He set his cup down. Tell me about Evan. The subject change was jarring. What about him? He's good at his job. Competent, ambitious, makes the right social moves. But there's something performative about it, like he's constantly proving himself. He wants to succeed. Everyone wants to succeed. But Evan wants it desperately. Why? I looked out at the street. A woman pushed a stroller past, a delivery truck double-parked. Normal life, indifferent to our conversation. His mother left when he was young. I worked a lot, sometimes 2 jobs. Maybe he felt he had to be exceptional to be worth attention. And you? What did you do that made him think you weren't exceptional? I was there, fed him, housed him, paid for everything, but I wasn't impressive, didn't make a lot of money, didn't have status, just showed up and did the work. Caleb leaned forward. Has he ever asked what you did before he was born? No. Does he know you graduated with honors? That professors wanted you to pursue graduate school? It never came up. Because you didn't tell him, or because he didn't ask? I didn't answer. Caleb sat back. I'm having our documentation team pull historical records, company formation documents, early business plans, the works. There's a consulting project I might need your input on. Would you be available for occasional meetings? Of course. Good. He stood, gathered his coat. One more thing, Mason. There's a company town hall scheduled for next month. Performance review, future planning, the usual. I'd like you to attend. I'm temporary administrative staff. You're someone I want there. That's what matters. He left cash on the table and walked out. I sat finishing my coffee and watching the street until the cup was empty and the world had moved on without noticing I'd been there at all. Back at the office, I found Evan waiting at my desk. His expression was controlled fury barely contained by professional necessity. What are you doing? Working. With Rourke. What are you doing with him? He asked for input on some historical documentation. Documentation about what? Company history. Formation records. Why you? You'd have to ask him. Evan's jaw worked. Around us, people were pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. This is my workplace, Mason. Mine. I got you this job because I felt sorry for you. Don't make me regret it. I'm just doing what I'm asked. Are you? He leaned close, voice dropping. Or are you trying to embarrass me? Make me look bad by… what? Pretending you and Rourke are old friends? We are old friends. You don't have friends like Caleb Rourke. You have friends who pick apples and can't pay their rent on time. Know your place. He walked away before I could respond. Trevor had watched the whole exchange from his desk. When Evan was gone, he came over, expression carefully neutral. That was intense. Family dynamics. Yeah, still. He perched on the edge of my desk. Word of advice? Evan's got a temper, but he's also got the ear of people who matter here. I'd be careful about making him look small. I'm not trying to make him look anything. Maybe not, but impact matters more than intention. He glanced toward Caleb's office. And whatever you've got going with Rourke, that impacts Evan whether you mean it to or not. He left me with that. I returned to data entry and tried to ignore the weight of attention on my back. But the office had noticed something. A shift in hierarchy, subtle but present. The temporary administrative worker wasn't quite as disposable as he'd seemed. And Evan, brilliant, ambitious Evan, had just publicly revealed his greatest weakness. He cared desperately what people thought. The next 2 weeks settled into a rhythm. I worked quietly, attended meetings when asked, provided input on documentation that Caleb's team was reviewing. Evan watched me constantly, tension radiating from him like heat. His performance at work became sharper, more aggressive. He stayed later, talked louder, made sure everyone knew about every success. He was afraid. I could see it in how he moved, how he controlled conversations. Someone who'd spent his whole life being certain of his superiority was starting to wonder if the foundation was as solid as he'd thought. Trevor and his circle still treated me with casual condescension, but it had shifted slightly. Now they were condescending the way you are to someone you're not quite sure about. Polite dismissal instead of open contempt. Small victories, but I wasn't keeping score. Caleb called me to his office on a Tuesday. His desk was covered in documents, some dating back to the company's founding. He gestured at the papers like they were evidence in a trial. "This is interesting," he said. "Our earliest business plans reference academic consultation on market analysis and consumer behavior. Specifically mentions insights from literature and narrative structure as they apply to brand development. That's unusual." "It is, because most business plans don't cite English majors as consultants." He slid a document across the desk. "But this one does. Names redacted for privacy, but the methodology is very specific. Understanding consumer motivation through narrative arc theory. Positioning products as resolution to story problems." I looked at the paper and saw my own words from 3 decades ago, dressed up in business language but still recognizably mine. I'd written it for Caleb during his senior year, helped him develop his thesis on marketing strategy. He'd been panicking about graduation, about proving to his father he could think strategically. "You kept this." "I kept everything that helped me build this company, because I'm not stupid enough to forget where good ideas come from." He took the paper back. "The town hall is in 2 weeks. I want you there, front row. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Evan won't like it." "Evan hasn't liked anything I've done since I got here." Caleb smiled. "No, but he's about to like it even less." That night, Evan showed up at my apartment. He'd never visited before, not once in the 3 years I'd lived there. He stood in my small living room looking at the space like it offended him personally. The second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling, the carpet that had been old when I moved in. "This is where you live? This is what I can afford." He turned in a slow circle. "I offered to help you find something better. You said no, because I didn't want to owe you." "Right. Your pride." He laughed bitterly. "You know what's funny? You've got all this pride about money, about not taking help, but you've got none about taking a job from your son, working under me. That doesn't bother your pride at all?" "Work is work. Not when it makes me look bad." He faced me fully. "What did you say to Rourke?" "Nothing. You're lying. He treats you different than other temp staff. He asks for you specifically, people notice." So? So it reflects on me, my judgment, my ability to read situations." His voice was rising. "Do you understand that? Every time he singles you out, people wonder why. They wonder what you have that I don't. Maybe they wonder what you're afraid of." His face went red. "I'm not afraid of anything, especially not you. You're nobody. You've been nobody your entire life. The only thing you ever did successfully was raise me, and even that was barely adequate." The words should have hurt. Maybe they would have once. But I'd had time to think, to see the pattern. Evan wasn't angry at me. He was terrified of being me, of discovering that intelligence and success could fail to protect you from an indifferent universe, that you could do everything right and still end up alone in a cheap apartment with a broken collarbone and no safety net. I was his worst nightmare, what he might become if he stopped performing for even a moment. Evan, I kept my voice level. Go home. I'm not finished. Yes, you are. Go home. Get some sleep. This conversation isn't going anywhere good. He wanted to argue, I could see it, but something in my expression stopped him. He left without another word, and I heard his expensive car roar to life in the parking lot, heard him drive away too fast. I sat in the silence afterward and thought about the town hall, about what Caleb was planning, about whether I should warn Evan, but warning him would require him to listen, and Evan had stopped listening to me years ago. The office talk intensified as the town hall approached. Rumors about reorganization, promotion announcements, strategic shifts. Evan was wound tight, snapping at people, working late every night. He'd convinced himself something big was coming, some chance to prove himself definitively. Trevor mentioned it Thursday afternoon, voice low. Evan thinks there are director positions opening up, is that true? I don't know. But you're in meetings with Rourke. You'd know. I provide input on documentation. That's all. Right. He didn't believe me. Well, if you hear anything, I'll keep it to myself. He studied me with narrow eyes. You're different than you seemed. Am I? When you started, I thought you were just some broken-down guy who needed a desk job. Now I'm not sure what you are. Still just a broken-down guy. The desk job hasn't changed that. But it had changed something. The way people looked at me, the weight I carried in conversations. Caleb's continued attention had given me a kind of reflected status, however temporary. Friday afternoon, Lydia stopped by my desk with a paper. Your attendance is confirmed for the town hall. You'll be seated in Section A, Row 1. First row? Mr. Rourke's request. Across the floor, I saw Evan watching. His expression was unreadable, but his hands were clenched on his desk. The pieces were all in position now. Whatever was going to happen, it was going to happen in front of everyone, and Evan, for all his intelligence, still didn't see it coming. The town hall was scheduled for 2 p.m. on Friday in the main conference space. The entire company, about 150 people, crammed into a room designed for 100. I arrived early and found my seat in the front row, directly in Caleb's line of sight. The seats around me filled with senior staff, directors, people who belonged there. I didn't belong there. Evan sat 3 rows back with Trevor and the others from our floor. I felt his stare like physical pressure. Other people kept glancing at me, whispering. Why was temporary administrative staff in the front row? What did Mason Torin know? Nothing. I knew nothing. But Caleb Rourke knew everything, and he'd positioned me like a chess piece. Caleb took the stage at exactly 2. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my car, looked comfortable in his power in a way that came from 30 years of holding it. He smiled at the room, and the room smiled back, the easy exchange of people who knew their places. Thank you all for coming, he began. I want to talk today about foundations, about what we build on, and who helps us build it. Standard corporate opener. People settled in, expecting the usual strategic vision presentation. This company started 30 years ago with family money and big ideas. I had the money. I didn't have the ideas. Mild laughter rippled through the room. So I found people who did. Consultants, advisors, very smart individuals who could see patterns I couldn't. One of those people is here today. Every eye in the room turned to me. I kept my expression neutral. Mason Torin and I went to college together. I was a mediocre student with rich parents. He was brilliant. Dean's List, honors, the works. He helped me and dozens of others pass classes we had no business passing. More than that, he taught us how to think differently, how to see narrative structure in market behavior, how consumer psychology follows the same patterns as classic literature. Evan's face had gone pale. I built this company on concepts Mason explained to me when we were 22. I've made millions implementing frameworks he taught me for free because he was generous with his knowledge. Caleb's voice carried perfectly in the silent room. So when I saw him here, working data entry because he'd been injured and needed income. I wanted to understand something. He pulled up a slide. Performance metrics, color-coded by employee. Green for excellent, yellow for adequate, red for concerning. This company rewards merit. We promote based on results. That's our culture. He advanced the slide. But sometimes we reward performance, the appearance of success, rather than actual contribution. And sometimes we miss quiet excellence because it doesn't announce itself. Another slide. This one showing project outcomes, attribution of ideas, credit assignment. I recognized the data. It came from documents I'd helped review. Over the past month, I've had our team audit attribution on major initiatives. Who actually generated winning strategies versus who presented them. The results were illuminating. He clicked again. Names appeared. Evans was highlighted in yellow, adequate but inflated. Below it, in tiny print, were the actual sources of ideas he'd claimed. Other people's work, repackaged and presented as his own innovation. The room was completely silent. To be clear, Caleb continued, this isn't about malicious theft. It's about a pattern we've all engaged in, taking collaboration and claiming ownership, standing on shoulders and forgetting whose shoulders they are. Evan's hands were shaking. I could see them from where I sat. I'm implementing a new system starting next quarter. Full attribution chains on all major projects. If you implement someone's idea, their name goes on it. If you build on someone's framework, they get credit. Transparency in intellectual contribution. Trevor was staring at Evan. So were others on their floor. The implication was clear. If full attribution had been in place all along, Evan's record would look very different. Caleb looked directly at me. I also want to acknowledge that excellence doesn't always come in the package we expect. Mason Torrin has a better education than most of our senior staff. He thinks more clearly than people making 5 times his salary, and he's been sitting at a data entry desk because we value credentials and confidence over actual capability. He paused. Let that sink in. I offered Mason a senior consulting position. He declined, said he didn't want to create complications for family members who work here. That kind of integrity is rare. The room was looking at me again, but differently now, not curious anymore, reassessing. The point of this town hall isn't to embarrass anyone. It's to remind us all that we don't get here alone. Success is collaborative, knowledge is shared, and the people we dismiss might be the ones who taught us everything we know. He closed with standard future vision talk, but nobody was listening. The damage was done. Evan sat frozen, face ashen, while around him people processed what they'd just learned, that the temp worker in the sling had been the source of the company's foundational strategy, that the son who'd treated him with public contempt was standing on his father's uncredited work. The meeting ended. People filed out in clusters, buzzing with conversation. I stayed in my seat until the room was mostly empty. Caleb approached, sat beside me. Too much? Maybe. He needed to understand. Understand what? That arrogance without foundation collapses eventually. Better now than in 10 years when he has further to fall. Caleb stood. You're still declining the consulting offer? Yes. Then I'll process your medical clearance return. You can go back to whatever work you choose. But Mason? He met my eyes. You're not nobody. You never were. Make sure you remember that. He left me alone in the conference room. Outside, I could hear voices, shock and speculation. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else was angry, talking about fairness and transparency. I gathered my things slowly. My shoulder ached less now, healing on schedule. I could probably return to orchard work if I wanted, or find something else, something different. Evan was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against my car. He looked small somehow, diminished. When he saw me, he straightened, trying to recover some dignity. Are you happy now? This wasn't about happiness. You humiliated me, in front of everyone. My colleagues, my boss, people who report to me. I didn't do anything. I just existed in a space where you decided I didn't matter. His face twisted. You let him do this. You could have stopped it. Why would I stop him from telling the truth? Because I'm your son. The word hung between us, hollow and desperate. I looked at the man I'd raised, brilliant, insecure, still trying to prove his worth by diminishing me, and felt only fatigue. Not anger, not triumph, just tired. You are my son, I said quietly. But that doesn't mean I have to let you treat me like I'm worthless, or pretend your success happened in a vacuum. I unlocked my car. You're talented, Evan. You always have been. But talent without humility is just performance. And eventually, someone notices. So what now? Back to picking apples? Back to being nobody? Maybe. Or maybe something else. I opened the door. Either way, I won't be ashamed of it anymore, and I won't let you make me feel like I should be. I drove away, leaving him in the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, he grew smaller until he disappeared. 3 days later, I returned to the orchard. My shoulder had healed enough for light work. The owner welcomed me back without questions. I worked outdoors, with my hands, thinking only about branches and harvest timing. It was simple, honest, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to apologize for it. Caleb called once, asked if I'd reconsider consulting. I thanked him and declined. He understood. Some debts are paid by witnessing, not interfering. Evan never called. I heard he'd transferred departments, taken a lateral role away from people who'd seen his exposure. Maybe he learned something. Maybe he didn't. Either way, it wasn't mine to fix anymore. I'd spent 27 years trying to be a good father by shrinking myself, by being small so he could feel big, by mistaking endurance for love. But real love doesn't ask you to disappear, and it doesn't require shame. I climbed a ladder in the late autumn sun and reached for ripe fruit. The work was hard, the pay modest, and no one would ever call it impressive. But it was mine. And that was enough.